Oh gosh, what did I do? Right, so I appreciate that was probably a very, very challenging task, considering you'd had half an hour of introduction to what this is and trying to get your head around the terminology and then put it into some kind of context. There was an element of that that is deliberate. It is to kind of force you into that almost uncomfortable zone to actually see that this is challenging and difficult, and it takes a lot of practice and time to get right. And there's also no right or wrong way. A lot of people were asking me about, well, how long would that take? And actually quite often in Scrum, we do the opposite, and we bounce the question back and we say, well, how long do you think it would take? And what's involved in doing that? And sometimes you can simplify this and say, okay, well, to make a cup of tea, you could say that as a task is make a cup of tea. Or you could say to take the mug and then put a tea bag in and pour the water in. And then you could say, well, you need to break that down further and say, you need to get the mug out of the cupboard. To get that out of the cupboard, you've got to open the door. And you see that level of detail breaking down. And then you can kind of collectively say, well, that's going to take me 2 seconds or 4 seconds. It takes 20 seconds. And everybody can have their own opinion on that because it's got different variables around it. I think the last room that I was in, and apologies, I didn't get the name, somebody said that this is very difficult to do for the first time. And I think as you practice and get more experienced, it gets a bit easier. And that is very, very true. There's a sort of rhythm and pattern that you follow within Agile that you go through, which is called storming, forming, and norming. So storming being that everything's chaotic, no one really knows what they're doing, but everyone's trying to do something and it's a bit mad. Forming is as you then start to come together and people start to see the structure, people start to understand their roles and feel those sort of slots of what they're contributing and how it's coming together. And then norming is when you're really starting to get into that rhythm of everybody knows how things are working, the structure of things. And then there is one bit after that, which is performing. And that's when you really start to rocket at a pace and you start to move faster. So don't worry, because we kind of asked you guys to do that storming part and try and get somewhere close to forming. However, I think, Maddie, correct me if I'm wrong, we estimated it took us something like 4 to 5 sprints to get close to sort of norming in verse. Yeah. So, and that's about 8 weeks worth of work as a team together to really get into that rhythm. So this does and is very difficult to begin with. This is also, Agile is designed for people working collaboratively together in person. Most of this stuff happens with post-it notes stuck to walls and whiteboards and people drawing pictures and how things relate. You can have the most fantastic technology and Zoom and rooms, but nothing actually perfectly replicates that office room with some pens and drawings and post-it notes. So you've also had that uphill battle. I think that's everything from me sort of about the task. Anything you want to add, Maddie, before we sort of wrap up?
No, it's really good. It was really good to see everyone collaborating together. My team did really well from what I saw. It sounds like everyone else did, took a while to get on board, but it all seemed like it came out with a positive outcome. So if anyone wants to jump in and kind of show their perspective of it and how they found it, please feel free to put your hand up or, chat and unmute yourself. But apart from that, yeah, I thought it was good.
Can I say something about my team?
Yeah, please do.
I think they were wicked.
Great.
They were really cool. Very quickly, we had people volunteering for roles. Laurencia was our developer. We had 2 product owners, Samantha and Abigail, and then I think one of them then came back and helped Laurencia out with the development. So she was a PO come dev, so a genius, literally. And then we had Hawa as well. We spent a lot of time talking about what it is that we're trying to build, sort of checking with the product owner that, okay, we drew up some personas for a visitor. We were constantly talking about the security aspect, the business entrances. Are we building something with a chip? Are we building an app? Laurencia was really, really clear that it's going to take her 5 days, to do the work. She was very clear about that shit. Like 5 days, and I was all for it. So I think we were cool at estimating our time. We needed a little bit more time we filled out a little bit of the sprint backlog. We needed a little more time to populate that a bit more. But we were very clear that we needed entrance counters. We needed a Bluetooth enabled counter. We needed a tag reader at the shop entrances. We wanted to create an online visitor form, and we needed to create FAQs to help the visitors. So they, if they had to help the visitors actually fill out the form, which would, stop the delay. So that when they filled out the form, they would get an exact time that they could come to the center and not before. We also wanted our app to have a map of possible locations for hand sanitizers based on the number of people who were in the shop center. So I think the team really, really thought about it very well. They were clear about really trying to solve the problems of the product owner. And at one point, when the product owner prioritized what she wanted, as in she wanted the security guys' objectives to be met first, then the busiest entrance, then the visitors form, and then which shops are busy at what time. We sort of pushed back a little bit and said, we think maybe the visitors form isn't that much of a priority because those are things we can quickly come up with. So can we move it down below? And our product owner agreed. So very flexible. I think you should give us this project, and I think you can pay us $1 million.
Great. I mean, there was a couple of things there. The first is that you essentially have just done
We want the money. Laurencia, Hawa, Abigail, Samantha, I'm fighting for our money.
And then, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So I was just saying that what you did there was sort of like a sprint retrospective. You talked about how good the team were, how well they performed, and everybody's roles and things. And then you've also sort of seen it from every different person's angle. You thought about every different person's priorities, what's important to them, but focused on that overall value. At the end of the day, you could create that form for visitors and spend your entire first sprint creating that form, which helps the visitors, but does it actually help the objective of the overall app, which is to, I can't even remember what the objective was, sorry, to manage footfall. So it does to a point, but not entirely. Anyhow, we digress. That's really good. If anybody wants to talk anymore, please do jump in. I'm going to hand to Maddie to just sort of wrap up and summarize, and then we're here for an open forum questions. We wanted to leave sort of some time at the end just to let anyone ask anything that they want. So over to Maddie.
I think, sorry, if I can just jump in ahead of Maddie's slide. I think, so our team, I think we were, as a delivery team, we were quite inexperienced. So I think one thing that I'd probably want to highlight from our team is the power of asking questions and not being afraid to clarify. That's obviously really important in kind of agile delivery, is to constantly be checking back on, right, is this the right thing? Are we going in the right direction? And that kind of fail fast mentality that means that you essentially get to the end result quicker. Because if we'd have all just sat there and gone, well, we don't really know exactly what we're doing, we can't quite clarify the goal of this app, then we would have spent 20 minutes not really knowing and getting anywhere. Whereas asking for help from Andy and asking some questions just clarified things a bit better for us. So I think that's just another thing to remember about, you know, being happy to ask questions, being comfortable with the ambiguity of not knowing all the answers to all the questions, but knowing enough to be able to make some progress.
Perfect. Yeah, I just got through the chat. So nice comment from Cynthia here saying fail fast mentality helps, and asking for questions and clarity was good for the team. So yeah, completely. It's having that kind of open mindset of being able to say, you know, I'm not afraid to ask questions. Nothing's a silly question. And if it ultimately helps the development of the team, then it, you know, it's not a silly question at all, and it definitely helps progress. So yeah, fail fast mentality is actually, you know, not a bad thing. So just to carry on, I suppose, and kind of summarize, obviously went through mine and Andy's career journeys, mine arguably quite short. We went through the agile delivery importance factors and the three main goals there. So to set a common objective, having the bite-sized chunks, having a structured way of working, and also creating a framework that accepts change and allows a value to shift. Then went through the key elements and ceremonies of Agile. So I won't go through all of them because there's quite a few, as you can see on the slide. And then obviously we finalised with going into our separate rooms and continue on with the case study that Laura and Joe introduced us to. So I've just had a question from Charlene saying, can Agile work for smaller teams too? Definitely. Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got to be a bit more, you know, pragmatic in the sense that, you know, you are a smaller team. You're only going to have so many resources in order to create that task or create that piece of iteration. So you need to be more kind of in tune with what you know you can achieve within a given time frame, because you've only got a short number of people. Andy, do you want to add anything?
Just that all of the roles can be, like, you can double hat with them. So you might be in the dev team as a UX creator, but you could also be the Scrum Master. You could be a tester, but you could also be a Scrum Master. Product owner is the only one that is generally, or should ideally, be a bit more protected. But you can do it in a very, very small team. You just have to be quite disciplined in what it is that you're doing. I would say give it a go for sure in whatever situation you've got, and you'll find that you'll pick and choose certain things will work, and you'll say the daily scrum's great because there's three of us and we just want to make sure that we've got that structured time, but a full sprint retrospective feels like a bit of a waste of time because actually we give feedback every single day on each other's work, so that's good. So yes, you can adapt it to how it works for you. Cool.
Do you want to move to the final slide, Andy?
Okay.
This is me, sorry. Yeah, so essentially that is it from us. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to unmute or type it in the chat. But also check out our website. Also connect with us on LinkedIn. If you've got any other questions after this call, we're all here to kind of help you guys along with your journey. Anyone else want to add anything?
I would just say that Principal One is also going to be attending the demo days to kind of see what you guys have been up to over the past sort of time you've been on the program. So it'll be really interesting to see what you guys have been up to. I think I have a question, if that's okay. I just ask from the people that are on this call, what position might they find themselves, how might they first come across Agile delivery, and what position might they find themselves in a team?
So without knowing where you are in your career journeys, you may well have experienced some of this without even knowing about it. particularly the first things that sort of come into play are those daily stand-ups. You might call them touch points. They might be just you're going in and saying hello and you have a morning meeting. The first time that you really start to see it structured and properly within this framework, I would say, is when you start noticing within either your organization or the project that you are working on, you start looking at solving a problem, and you think about the different ways that you could approach that problem. And almost certainly, if you haven't been through it already, you'll go through a trial process of saying, there's a problem that I want to solve. Let me write down and draw out exactly how I'm going to solve that problem entirely from end to end. And that might take you a couple of days to map out. And then you start going, okay, I'll start attacking that problem. And then you realize that actually something's changed. So you might need to go back and re-edit your plan. And it almost will naturally pull you in that direction of Agile. And you'll start realizing and seeing that certain processes, ceremonies, and things that you do will appear. Anything to add, Maddie, more specifically? Or?
No, that'll do just fine. Thank you.
Anyone else got any other questions?
I'll ask a question out to the audience instead then, if there's no questions. This was a really hard topic for us to try and write as an introduction. You've probably gathered that it is an absolute mine of information, and so many what ifs and situations. And this is normally a training course that lasts 2 or 3 days worth of work. And we've tried to condense it down and pick out the bits which we think are most important. Did it work? Do you feel informed? Do you feel like you've got that introduction to? And honestly, like sprint retrospective style, be honest. If it wasn't, honesty really helps us, because we want to do it properly and make sure it works. And if it was absolutely rubbish, tell us. We'll go away and try again, and we'll come back in a month's time.
I went upstairs. Hi, I'm Cynthia. So just with my background, not necessarily in tech yet, I am navigating into tech, but I come from a healthcare background. So for me, a lot of this stuff was very new. And I think I did like it. I really did enjoy it. And I felt I think I learned by practically doing. It would have been good if we could do maybe an example all together, and then we could break out into breakouts afterwards, because I felt, not gonna lie, initially I was like, wait, what are we doing again? But yes, I think that's my only one feedback, as in for someone who's like doesn't know what Agile is and doesn't know this world at all, maybe doing an exercise all together, even if it's like a mini one, and then we can break out into groups into a proper one afterwards. But having done it and like been able to ask questions, and like it was really fun actually just being to think outside the box with like how do we like capture footfall and stuff like that. So it was a fun exercise. Still enjoyed it. So thank you.
Cool. You're very welcome. That's really helpful. And we'll take it on board, and I'm sure we will do more of these. So we'll improve it for next time. That's very helpful. And if you guys feel like